Good morning, everybody, and happy new tax year to you. It's the 6th of April. We're into a new tax year. Whoopie-doo. My name is Graham from Robson Laidler. That's a picture of me pre-COVID, and this is me now. I apologise for the background, sharing the video screen with a monkey, a toucan, a snake, and a butterfly. I'll leave it to you to decide which one is most appealing. If anybody knows what they're doing on Zoom and can tell me how to blur the background, I'd be grateful if you could get in touch. Enough of that waffle. Today, I want to talk to you about the Corona Job Retention Scheme. Let me just move myself there. The CJRS, or for the purposes of this talk, let's just call it the scheme. And this is the guidance as of today. We had some initial guidance set, which was published at the end of March, and on Saturday night, overnight, there was some clarification on various aspects of it, and I'm going to try and cover some of that off today. So in the session, we're going to look at who can claim under this scheme, which employees are covered under this scheme, how to actually go about furloughing somebody, how much is the grant that you can claim back under this scheme, the practicalities of actually running the payroll under this scheme, and the claim itself. Okay, so first of all, who can claim? There's three prerequisites really. First of all, you must have created and started a payroll scheme on or before the 28th of February 2020, and you must have enrolled for PAYE online, and you must have a UK bank account. The start date is self-explanatory really. They did not want people to be setting up payrolls to take advantage of this scheme, and so therefore we'll have that line in the sand of the 28th of February 2020. In terms of what businesses can claim, it's inclusive. The government wanted it to be inclusive, so it includes businesses, charities, not-for-profit organisations. Includes parents who employ nannies. I could do with a nanny in a minute. But if you were paying a nanny cash in hand, you've kind of shot yourself in the foot. You won't be able to claim under this scheme because you have to have had them going through PAYE. Public sector organisations can claim under the scheme, but HMRC, the government, have said that they would expect those kind of organisations to be essentially employing key workers, sort of specifically talking about NHS here, who it would be necessary and critical to have those guys still working, and therefore they wouldn't expect people to be furloughed in those circumstances. If you have, for instance, a mixed medical practice where you had some NHS stuff, some private stuff, then obviously there's scope to furlough to the extent that it covers the private work. But public sector organisations are not prevented from using this scheme, and owner-managed businesses also are allowed to use it. So which employees are covered here? Essentially, it includes all employees, those on 0-hour contracts, those on fixed-term contracts, but the critical thing is they must have been on your payroll on or before the 28th of February 2020. So anybody who's been hired since that date, they cannot be furloughed under this scheme. Again, to reiterate, obviously that was the line in the sand that was drawn to prevent people abusing this. Apprentices, they can be furloughed, but you have to pay for the training time, and we'll talk a little bit about that later. One group of people which isn't on this slide, which I probably should mention, are people that were made redundant or stopped working for you after the 28th of February 2020. They can be re-employed if you so wish, and then you put them on furlough, and then you can reclaim wages for them through this scheme. That was the Carrying Cole or Martin Lewis took credit for sort of getting that measure put through or clarified. It was already in the guidance, so I don't want to take the win from his sails. His ego needs it. So where was I? Yes, before the anti-Martin Lewis jibe. Temps on pay-as-you-earn at recruitment agency, they can be furloughed, as can agency workers that are working under an umbrella company. Shielding employees can be furloughed. Those are the individuals who are at risk and have been told to effectively self-isolate for 12 weeks because of their physical condition. Those people can be furloughed. Employees with what's called caring responsibilities, they can be furloughed. So somebody who's been sent home to look after children, their own children, they can be furloughed. Gain clarification at the weekend that you can be furloughed in one job and continue to work in a second job. There's nothing to prevent you doing that. In which case you can get 180% of your wages, can't you? 80% from the employer who you've been furloughed by, and 100% of your wage from the person that you continue to work from. Excuse me. Okay, let's move on. So who won't be covered under this scheme? So employees that are on sick leave or are self-isolating who are receiving statutory sick pay, they won't be covered. Employees on reduced hours, so say you've put somebody down to a 3-hour day, they can't be furloughed. And workers who are engaged under a contract for services, that's essentially self-employed people, sole traders or partners who have their own business and invoice you for their work. Those are, as I say, those individuals are self-employed, and they're going to have to claim support under the self-employed scheme. What about directors? There's been a lot of questions about this over the last few weeks, and the guidance at the weekend confirmed categorically that yes, as a director, you can furlough yourself. But what that means is you can, and this is quoting directly from the guidance, do no work to either generate commercial revenue or secondly, provide no work providing services to or on behalf of your company. It sets out that you can continue with your statutory obligations. Quite what that actually means in reality, not entirely sure about that. I think it would cover stuff you would do with Companies House, so like filing annual returns, filing accounts, getting your financial records into shape, that kind of stuff. You can continue to do that and still be furloughed, but you cannot do anything which is going to give you some commercial revenue or you providing services to or on behalf of your company. You can furlough yourself as a director of a one-man company, effectively a personal service company. That was set out, that was clarified at the weekend. And another thing which made clear at the weekend, that if you furlough a director, you have to prepare a formal resolution from the board of directors, which is then kept in the company records and is communicated to the director or directors who are being furloughed in writing. Okay, that was a condition which was, as I say, set out at the weekend that you need to follow. And if you don't follow it, you could pay the consequences of that later. We'll talk about that a little bit later. But directors, you can be furloughed. What does that mean? Well, if you're a director on a minimal salary, or you're going to get 500 quid a month, I'll just put this question out there. Is 500 quid a month worth effectively withdrawing yourself from your own business? And I'll leave it at that. So how do you furlough somebody? The first point to make clear here is that this scheme does not override employment law. So whilst an employee is on furlough, they still have all the same rights. They have the rights to statutory sick pay, the maternity, and other parental rights, rights against unfair dismissal, and the statutory rights surrounding redundancy payments. All of those still are in place, as are the usual equality and discrimination laws. They still apply. And the context for that is in terms of the decision as to who you furlough and who you do not furlough. Excuse me, my phone's ringing. I'll just have to quickly divert that call. Apologies. So you have to have mutual agreement to the furloughing. Okay, both the employer and the employee must agree to it. And as I've said before, the employer must confirm in writing to the furloughed employee that they've been furloughed. And you've got to keep a written record of that for 5 years. So again, some conditions in there which you have to adhere to. You have to follow those. If you're furloughed, as I've mentioned before, you can't do any work, but you can do some training. And it specifically says in the guidance issued at the weekend, you can actually, as an employer, go and help them find other work, or help them to find some volunteering opportunities. Obviously, bearing in mind the social distancing and the safety aspect of that, clearly. Okay. It's a contractual change when you furlough somebody. It's a variation of their employment terms, essentially. So there's certain protocols that you have to do. You can't just verbally say, ring somebody up, you're furloughed, don't bother coming in tomorrow. Okay, so once you furloughed somebody, or even before you've done that, you've probably decided whether you're going to pay them the full salary, even though you can only reclaim 80% of it, or whether you're going to reduce their salary to 80% of their regular payment, or in some circumstances, you may not be able to pay them anything, and you're waiting until that grant arrives from HMRC to pay them and pass the monies on to them. There's nothing to prevent you doing that, but obviously you're going to have to speak to your employees about that. In terms of the furlough period, there's a minimum period of 3 weeks that you can furlough somebody for, minimum period, and the maximum is obviously the 3 months running from the 1st of March. Okay. Again, it was made explicit in the guidance at the weekend that you can furlough somebody multiple times. So you can furlough them, bring them back to work, furlough them, bring them back to work, furlough them, etc., etc. At the end of the day, this support at the moment is only going to last until the 31st of May. They've said they may extend it. The government have said they might extend it. But at the moment in time, that's when this scheme is going to run out. But the fact that you can multiple furlough somebody enables you to rota your staff, your team. Okay, next. How much? Okay, how much? So the grant from the scheme is going to be the lower of £2,500 a month per employee, or 80% of their regular gross payments. In addition, employers' national insurance on that grant figure, get back, plus you can get back 3% of the employer's pension contribution. we're going to look at an example of that and hopefully that'll make that a little bit clearer. You can claim regular payments. Okay, there was a little bit of confusion as to whether that would include overtime, bonus, commissions, and at the weekend it was confirmed that where you have compulsory commission payments, compulsory fee payments, you can include them in your grant claim, essentially, on top of the regular wage. You can also include what's called past overtime. I'm not really sure what that means, to be perfectly honest with you. But what you cannot include is any discretionary payments that you're going to make, or have, I beg your pardon, that you made when you're working out the amount to claim back. It also does not include any benefits in kind. So if you pay, for instance, somebody's private medical insurance cost for them to give them that benefit, you cannot claim that back. Nor if you have employees who have sacrificed some of their salary, which means they've given up part of their regular wage, and in return are receiving something like an additional pension contribution. That additional pension contribution under salary sacrifice is not included in the amount that you can claim back. Deductions made for apprenticeship levies and student loans, they have to continue and they can't be reclaimed. For your owner managed business directors, the only remuneration that is covered under this scheme is the salary element of it, the amount that goes through the payroll, and not any dividends that you might take as part of your remuneration package. Just one small point in terms of this is on the next point, the national minimum wage. So if you have somebody who you pay a national minimum wage to, and you decide to then, under this scheme, pay them 80% of that, which takes you under the legal amounts of the national minimum wage, that is permitted under this scheme. However, if any element of their work whilst they are furloughed is training, okay, that, for the purposes of the minimum wage calculations, is deemed to be working time, and you've got to pay that at the appropriate minimum wage level. Okay, so you have to top up on top of the 80% for any training time that a furloughed person who receives national minimum wage only receives. Finally, just a little point, the grant that you receive under this scheme is going to be taxable income for your business. So, practicalities of running the payroll. I think it's important to distinguish at the outset between the grant funding element and the normal payroll operations. They're going to continue, okay? And the only difference might be that the employees aren't receiving their contractual wage. In terms of backdating stuff, you can't furlough somebody today, the 6th of April, and claim the grant for wages paid to them since the 1st of March. You just can't do that. Backdated claims are only allowed to the extent that that individual had been laid off or furloughed at that time. Okay. The £2,500 cap refers to regular payments that you are obliged to make. And we've talked about that. So like any discretionary payments aren't included. If you've got somebody with variable pay, so that means the amount that they were paid on the 28th of February in that payroll then was not really indicative of their normal weekly pay or their monthly pay, then you would look, when you're looking to work out the amount for those individuals, you look at the average earnings over the tax year, which has just ended yesterday, average earnings, or for the period that they've actually been employed if it was less than a full tax year. Okay, so just average them using normal principles. The figure that you've agreed with your employee that you're going to pay them is just taxed as normal earnings, and it's reported under the normal payroll RTI procedures. And just to point, the amount that you pay through the payroll will not necessarily equal what can be reclaimed, and we're going to look at an example next of how that works in practice. Just click on the next slide. Okay, so Kylie, she gets paid £3,500 a month, and she gets a generous employer's pension contribution of 9%. That equates to another 315 quid a month. The employer pays national insurance on that package of just short of £382 a month. So under this scheme, what can that employer claim back? He can claim back the £2,500, the cap, because he gets 3.5, he can only claim 2.5, plus nearly £244 worth of employer's national insurance. It's effectively 80% of the employer's national insurance charge, plus £59.40 of the pension contribution. How's the pension contribution worked out? That's worked out by these off. Just to clarify, these figures are for the current tax year, so this is for the tax year starting today. These are 1920 figures. It's 3% times what's called the qualifying earnings threshold, which is effectively the wage per month less 520 quid. In this example, it's capped at 2.5, so it's £2,500 less 520 quid times 3% gives you the £59.40. So in this example of Kylie and her employer, the employer can only get back 67% of the total costs that he's going to incur in paying her. Shameless plug, as it says in red, just highlighting this to you. As you can see, it's not exactly straightforward. We do payroll here at Robson Laidler, and we'd be delighted to help anybody out with taking on their payroll if it proves all too much for you. That's the only plug I'm going to do on this, by the way. So the claim itself, a standalone portal, so a completely new portal is being currently constructed by HMRC, and they've said, again reiterated at the weekend, that they think this will be in place by the end of April. Our sources on the ground suggest the 21st of April, but don't hold me to that. If we're looking at normal HMRC working times, that might be ambitious. Let's just leave it at that. As agents, we would hope to have access to that portal to put the figures in on your behalf. Nothing, it's silent on that, the guidance at the moment, but I think that's just makes perfect sense, to be perfectly honest. So what would you need to do on the claim? It's very simple, really. It's just a simple request to identify the business, identify the amount of the grant that you're going to claim back, who the individuals are that you've designated to be furloughed, the number of them, and the period of that furlough, whether it's 3 weeks, 1 month, 2 months, whatever it might be. Okay. HMRC will check the claim, and they're just going to pay one lump sum buybacks to a UK bank account, hopefully your UK bank account. You might want to think about how you're going to reconcile that once it's paid. It's just going to be a lump out. How are you going to account for that? And the last point, which again was reiterated at the weekend, but with a bit more oomph, if you like, was that HMRC will reserve the right, or do reserve the right, to audit all aspects of the claim. So is that looking at looking at fundamentally, what is this support there to do? This support is there to prevent a business making people redundant during the course of this crisis. Pretty subjective kind of thinking to arrive at that, I think. I don't know how that could be audited. The protocols that we've talked about, so the fact that you have to do it in writing, if it's a director, you have to have the board resolution, you have to keep that written record for 5 years, all of that kind of stuff. That's the kind of stuff that you need to do to make sure that you're not going to invalidate a claim and get your fingers burnt further down the line. Ending on a more, hopeful and positive note. We are here to support you, myself and the team. If you've got any questions or concerns about any of this, anything's been made less clear by talking to you, then get in touch. Please get in touch. I would ask you to follow us on the social media channels, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn. We tend to update a lot of intel on that as we find it and pass that on to you. So if you follow us on any of those channels, it's a good opportunity for you to keep in touch with what's happening. Make contact with your normal contact at Robson Laidler. They'll be more than happy to support and help you out with anything that anything questions or any issues that you have or any support that you need. And finally, is there any other topics that you'd like us to cover in this sort of format? Hopefully it's been of some use to you. Please don't bother emailing if it's, you've been sent to sleep by it, or you've, had some sort of continuing horrific dreams about a jungle mural. Anyway, it's been good to talk to you. As I say, hopefully you've got something out of it, and we'll be back in touch soon. Take care, everybody. Goodbye.